Okay, good morning everybody. Hopefully you can hear me, and if not, please give me a signal. Firstly, thank you for those that have been able to join so early in the morning. Appreciate you giving me the time. My name is Marina Ebrubah. I'm a senior financial crime manager at Man Group, and I'm also a member of an association called Black Women in Asset Management. And the organisers have asked me to join this conference today just to give an insight to my career to date and to share some tips for what it's worth. So without further ado, I can probably, the best place to probably start is on my background, so you can know a bit about me and how I've got to where I am today. So I grew up in West London in an area called Ladbroke Grove, for those of you that know London well. I grew up in a single parent home, so was raised by my mother, who is of Caribbean origin. She was a great role model to me and someone that instilled the importance of hard work and really just education. So a real emphasis on doing well at school and knowing what you want to do with your career. So she was really my first introduction to financial services and to the city. So she used to work in for Citigroup in Canary Wharf. So I remember going to meet her after school and getting to Canary Wharf, seeing the huge high-rise buildings and all the city workers and thinking, gosh, this is where, you know, all the money is. So it was really an early introduction to that world because I truly think if my mum hadn't worked for an American bank or worked in Canary Wharf, it would have probably never been an aspiration for me. When I look at my friendship circle or people that are around me, not many of them are in financial services. It wasn't a career that when I was growing up, it was something that I wanted to do. Most people in financial services in this industry, it's not something that they wanted to do from a young age or anything like that. So in most cases, it's either people falling into that by mistake or by chance or knowing someone that already works there. So in terms of my education, state school educated, I went to an all-girls Catholic school. And why that is important to me to make a note of and a point of quite regularly is that I think financial services has such a stigma, and especially in asset management, so the side that I work in on the buy side, it does have this stereotype of being all privately educated public school white middle class males, and in fact it's very diverse and not where it should be by any means, but you find people that work in that industry from all walks of background and all educational statuses. So as I said, wanted to get into financial services. It wasn't something that was a long burning passion of mine, and actually in school I wanted to be a teacher. I liked the thought of helping people and students to fulfill their potential. So it was something that I explored. But instead, shamingly admitting, I thought that a career in financial services would be more lucrative and I would earn more. And I always had this plan of saying that I would work in financial services, make lots of money, and then in the latter part of my career, move to teaching, something like that. So it's still something that I enjoy doing, and I do a lot of mentoring and things like that within the industry, which fulfills that burning passion to be a teacher. But that wasn't a path that I took in the end. So moving to the right top box then, and my early career, and what I did after university. So at uni, I stayed in London and I studied business and IT. I chose business because it was very broad and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then when I left university, unlike some of my colleagues, they were very focused and knew that they wanted to get on a graduate program in, say, an investment bank or an asset manager. I wasn't as I didn't have that clear path of what I wanted to do. So, but I knew I wanted to work. To be frankly honest, I found the whole process of graduate programs quite tedious. So the application forms were long, the tests were long, and I just thought I just need to get into a company and work. And then also the number of people that actually get onto graduate programs versus the people that apply, I just thought the chances are very slim. So I thought to myself, I will just get whatever job I can straight after university. And it so happened I ended up in the finance department of an estate agent. That was a great experience for me. And I think students underestimate the importance of learning an office environment and the corporate world. It was a big adjustment going from university to the world of work. Just the long hours and some of the tedious things that I were asked to do. I think that first job just helps you get into the routine of what it's like to be in a corporate environment. And I learned a lot of things there. It was a great company to work for. But again, I was the only Black person that was in that company. It was quite small, of 100. So there was that huge adjustment where I'd gone from university and Afro-Caribbean societies and around a lot of Black people to then being amongst a majority white environment. But it was a good life skill to learn because it reflects the industry. In that role, they had pushed me to do some professional exams, so to study ACCA or to look at some accounting qualifications, which I did. So that was, a good stepping stone in my career. I then went on, so I stayed there for a year and moved on to another property company, and that was my second job in a finance department. And I left for more responsibility and for more money. And I enjoyed it there. It was a good chance for me to see real estate accounting and, again, more experience in a corporate environment. And then in my third job, I moved to JP Morgan, as most of you all know, is an American investment bank. And that was quite a big decision for me because I had some ex-colleagues and friends that had worked in banking. As I mentioned earlier, my mum worked for Citi, so she worked in banking, and I knew that it had a bad reputation of a lot of long hours, very cutthroat, just a high performance environment. So I had to decide whether that was something that I wanted to pursue. Would I be at my desk till 11 o'clock at night? And was that something that I wanted to trade off versus the firm that I was currently at? And I decided that I would go for it. I liked the idea of working for an American bank, and also the brand of JP Morgan was obviously a big deciding factor. And so after a year at the second property company, I moved to JP Morgan as a fund accountant. I stayed at JP Morgan for 8 years, which is quite a long time. And I worked in 3 different departments while I was there, got promoted twice. In terms of the culture at JP Morgan, it was probably one of the best experiences that I've had in terms of companies to work for. It was hard work, and people there, do work to such a high standard. But I think it instilled a good work ethic in me and a high level of performance and quality of work. So it's definitely, it was definitely a major impact on my career to date for the brand. Fund accounting, I don't know what much I can say about that, but the good thing about JP Morgan is that you're on very complex accounts. You do get the opportunity to learn lots. So I worked in real estate, I worked in private equity as well, accounting, which is quite technical and complex. So I had great experience doing that there. I also had a lot of client-facing experience, which was good. I had an opportunity to travel quite a lot. So I went to the UAE, to Dubai, and to Abu Dhabi, more for client meetings and pitches with the sales teams. So overall, it was a great experience, and I learned a lot there. And I still have a lot of friends that are there, and in touch with some managers who would still give me a reference to this day. So fourth job then, and that was where I am currently, and that's at Man Group. And my first role at Man Group was head of one of our fund accounting teams. So I was running a team there and responsible for the delivery of fund accounting deliverables. And then I was there for 2 years. And then I've just recently moved a year ago into financial crime, which is a bit of a career change for me. Most people in financial crime have law backgrounds, whereas I come from an accounting background. So that was a big step for me to move internally. And then I've been doing that role now for just over a year and a half. So bottom left of the slide in terms of accomplishments. So as I mentioned, I was promoted twice during my 8 years at JP Morgan. And I can talk a bit about that because I think there's quite a skill or a process to understand to get on the promotion radar and to be promoted, especially in investment bank in a large organization. At Man Group, I was promoted twice as well. So the 2 roles that I said that I've done were considered promotions, and that was within a 3-year period. I've also taken 2 maternity leaves, so career breaks within my careers at both firms. I see that as an accomplishment because it is something that particularly women in this industry consider as to whether they can come back at the same position, or does it slow down their career? Can they still lean in and push as much as they would have for going on maternity leave? At Man Group, I've received a CEO Employee Recognition Award, and that was for my contribution to diversity and to the culture at Man Group. So that was quite an achievement. And then also in the industry, so there is a listing, which is, I think this year it was sponsored by Yahoo Finance, but it's a firm called, a list called Empower, led by an organisation called Involve, and they work quite heavily in industry to promote ethnic minority role models, because we are obviously in the minority, and I ranked number 44 the end of last year in the top 100 ethnic minority future leaders, which I consider as a great achievement. So me now then, this is bottom right of the slide. I am married with 2 children, so that brings its own juggles. In total, I have more than 15 years of experience in the industry, which is an achievement in itself to have lasted this long. It's not an easy path to take. I'm a senior financial crime manager at Man Group, as I mentioned. I also chair our London working group at Man Group for diversity and inclusion. So that's across the whole firm, which I can talk a bit about later as well. I think when people hear diversity and inclusion, they very much see it as something you're doing to volunteer or something for the greater good. And it definitely is. It's what I am passionate about. But I would like to get the message across that it also is a chance to demonstrate leadership. It's given me great access to senior executives within the industry. And I think it's just a key point to make that some initiatives that might come your way may look like they're volunteering or extra work, but they are actually a chance to develop your career even further. So I'm passionate about diversity and inclusion, as you can gather, and particularly in diversifying the pipeline. So this is one of the reasons why I was excited to do this talk here today, because I think it's important for people to see different role models within the industry and to know that they do belong in this industry. It's moved massively compared to when I first started 15 years ago, where it would be majority white and male. The pipeline is more diverse, and we are seeing more diverse leaders within the industry. And then lastly, mentoring. So something that I'm really passionate about, and I mentor early career professionals, so 0 to 10 years, both at Man Group and within the industry as well. So hopefully that gives a quick overview of who I am. So next slide then. And I know I touched on my career path, but I really wanted to pull out things that I wish I'd known when I started, if I'm looking back. And these stem from questions that I get quite a lot from doing these types of talks. So Man Group, for those of you that don't know, Man Group is a publicly listed asset manager, and traditionally a hedge fund manager, but we've moved away from that now. And it comprises of various departments, as you can imagine. So what we class as the front office, where you have the sales and portfolio managers running different strategies. And then we have our infrastructure teams, which comprise of operations, technology, legal, compliance. So I fit into the compliance bucket, but heavily supporting our portfolio managers and sales teams. I think from the outside, before I took the role at Man Group, whereas I previously worked for JP Morgan, it's a well-known brand. Moving to a brand that is not so well-known to the average person brought its own challenges. The fact that we are a smaller size firm, and asset management traditionally is male-dominated, it was something that I was apprehensive about working for an asset manager. But actually my experience has been fantastic, and I've had more career progression than I did at all the years that I was at JP Morgan. So I think a lesson learned there is to do your research about a company, to be open-minded of the type of companies that you work for, and not necessarily the brands that you know, and to look for what opportunities are available and the people that work within that firm. Financial crime compliance. In a nutshell, what is financial crime compliance? So we protect the firm from the risk of financial crime. And financial crime covers everything from money laundering, anti-bribery and corruption. It touches on fraud and investigations as well. But it's my role is very interesting. It's varied. I don't do the same things every day. So one day I could be working on a fraud investigation for the firm, and the other day I could be speaking with our sales guys, looking at regions that they want to find more opportunities. So recently I've been looking at some of our African prospects and whether we were comfortable doing business in those regions. So it's a lot of investigative work, a lot of report writing. As I said, most people have come from law background, so it's a lot of policy and regulations, but I really enjoy it. And more so I enjoy the access it gives me to different touch points of the firm. So we cover all of the firm in essence. Seizing opportunities, I've put down as a key point, and something that I wish that I knew when I was starting out my career. And that is, I think, the biggest thing that will help in terms of progression and promotion, and getting used to saying yes and not being so rigid in the plan or career path that you want. And I'm someone, people always ask me, what do you want to do in 3 years? What's the plan in 5 years' time? What's next? And I'm very much an opportunity by opportunity person. I'm very open-minded as long as I'm progressing. And sometimes opportunities present themselves in different ways, and it can be something that's not core to your day-to-day work. Like I mentioned, the diversity and inclusion work that I do. It can look like hard work or an extra project, but I've never taken an opportunity and it's not been fruitful. So it's something that I would really encourage people to be open-minded about. Large organizations versus medium-sized organizations, a flat structure organizations. That's a question I get asked a lot by students. You know, a company like JP Morgan with thousands of people versus a medium-sized flat structure organization, what is better? And I always say it's difficult. They both have their own pros and cons to all. Large organizations, I love the fact that you have a clear career path. So, you know, it's very straightforward. You go in as an analyst, you try to get to associate, senior associate, VP, ED, MD. You always know what you're striving for. And there's that clear goal of what you're doing. On the flip side to that is you tend to be quite silo in terms of the work you're doing. It's a large organization and it's likely to be very much process driven. And the chances of you getting involved in something that's outside of your business area is slim. There's also obviously more competition, that sort of environment where there's one promotion and you have a team of 6 analysts, you're all going for the same thing. But then also, you know, on the plus side, you do get to meet some of the best in the industry in those big brand organizations as well. Versus a medium size and flat structure, what are the benefits? So I think the negatives are the career paths are not so they're not so visible to see. So it's not as simple as saying, even in the role I am now, what would be my next step is quite difficult to see because it is a flat structure and you have a lot of senior people. On the plus side, you do get access to senior people that you might not have at the bank. So you know, I regularly can speak with my CEO. I have access to our COO and CIO. Whereas they, in the equivalent of the banks, they would be senior MDs, and the chances of me having access to them, you'd have a hierarchy that you have to go through. It's less open door policy. Whereas at the medium-sized organizations, you will have exposure to more senior people, which is definitely a benefit in terms of learning and your career and your networks. The other downside to that, other than career paths, well, one of the plus sides is you do get to carve out your own career. So in a company like Man Group, you can say, this is what I'd like to do next. I'd love to do this role. This would benefit the company. I'm seeing this opportunity. And they can carve out a role for you. Or we could acquire another fund manager and grow in terms of acquisition, and I could put my hand up to say, you know, I'd love to be COO. They might not give it to me, but I would, you know, love to be a business manager or senior business manager within that new area of business, and I would be considered based on my track record to date or not. Whereas in a larger organization, you're in a queue. And even if you're, say, VP and you want to go to ED, it's an unwritten rule that you need to be doing that VP position for at least 3 years before you can be considered for another promotion. Whereas in the medium size, you do get to rewrite some of the rules and make your own career path, which I do like. Sell side versus buy side culture, something I get asked quite a lot. It's a difficult one to pinpoint. The sell side, I think, is I don't want to say professional, that just sounds so bad, but it is more corporate, more, you know, even in terms of just dress code and atmosphere, it is very structured and corporate environment, which has its benefits. Like, I've definitely benefited from that. and it drives the work ethic and standard. The buy side culture, certainly at Man Group anyway, is a lot more entrepreneurial. So even just in terms of dress code, you'll see a lot of the tech guys that are in jeans and trainers. Like, it is just more of a relaxed culture, but it does have more of an entrepreneurial startup type vibe where there's lots of breakout areas. It's a culture of being more collaborative. On the sales side, you have set processes that are driven and decisions that are made based on what has always been done, procedures and processes and regulations. Whereas on the buy side, it is a lot more case by case. So something will come up, or an issue will happen, or we want to launch a new product, and everyone will get in the room. Everyone needs to input. There isn't a one size fits all rule, which again has its benefits and not. Sometimes it can make it slower to make a decision because it's a lot easier when you have a process and a protocol. But I think overall on the buy side, you get to a better product, and it's different, right? The sell side are providing services to us on the buy side, so it is completely different. Navigating an organization, and I put there learning and promotion. So this is quite key, and I'm saying this as also a Black woman in asset management, and the things that maybe I need to navigate versus some of my colleagues. I think if I'm looking at what I wish I'd known now that I didn't, it would be not to underestimate the importance of relationships. Hard work is key, but it isn't enough. And just a quick example on the promotion thing. So at JP Morgan, if you want to be promoted from, say, senior associate to VP, you have to do your day job well. You have to be exceeding year-end standard. You have to have taken on certain projects. But most importantly, other managers need to know who you are. So the decision is decided with all of the ED managers in that area of business sitting down around a table and saying, for example, my manager, I want to put Marina forward for this promotion. And there's a joke at JP Morgan that the worst thing that could be said is for one of the other managers to say, who's Marina? So it's very important to get everyone else's buy-in for your promotion. So in doing that, it's not just about impressing your boss or doing well on a project. You need that visibility. You need to have relationships built outside of your business area. And those are the sort of things that I think day one of joining a firm, or certainly at university, you're not taught that. But it's something that I think is key to career progression. Also setting key objectives and you driving your own year end, not waiting for your manager to say, you're doing well, soliciting feedback, letting people know this is where you're trying to get to, what can I do to get there? So of the times I have been promoted, I have always said to my manager, look, I want to get to VP, or I want to get to senior associate. What do I need to do to get there? What projects can I work on to get there? What can I deliver that will help you go into that room and ask for that promotion? And then working back from that then drives, I've been very clear on what I want. That then drives the objectives for me to be able to hit them for the year end, to be able to be promoted. Specialist versus generalist. It's something that comes up quite a lot. And as you can gather from my career and the different roles that I've done, I'm more of a generalist. So of course you specialize in that role, but I've never been, I want to get to CFO because I've done accounting. I'm very much opportunity based, and my career has been more of a zigzag, although incline. And I think that both of them carry different benefits. It depends on what you enjoy doing and what type of person you are. So, in the banks, you often see VPs or EDs that are very good from a generalist perspective, and they can be picked up and dropped into any department, run any line of business. And then you have people who are just specialists within that field or division, and they just stay there. For me, I find it more interesting to do different roles within an organization, still adding value. After 2 years or so in a role, I get a bit of an itch and I want to learn something different and do something different. But I don't think that has impacted my career negatively at all. I think as long as, one, it's within the same organization, and two, that my track record is great. So I'm leaving or moving on off my own accord, and the team that I'm in, will attest that I've delivered value to that role. Lastly, mentors and sponsors, which I think is it's a massive thing, and hopefully everyone's quite clear on what the difference between the two are. So for me, anyway, a mentor is someone that you can bounce ideas off, someone that you might meet on a regular basis, and can talk through issues and things like that. A sponsor for me is somebody that advocates you when you're not there in the room. So they'll be the person when a project comes up, usually very senior, that will say, what about Marina? Marina could do this. And it's not easy to get either a mentor or a sponsor. I have found in my career that most of the best mentors and sponsors that I have happened organically. So usually from me, again, going back to the seizing opportunities, putting my hand up for a project or initiative that I want to work on and deliver, doing a good job, and then that person has offered mentoring or sponsorship to me based on what I've done. It's happened more organically, or I've gone to them with a problem. But I don't know, the structured mentoring programs work as well. I'm a part of them also, but I think the key for me for really meaningful mentors and sponsorship is from relationship building, and usually it's from you delivering something to that person and impressing them so much so that they want to mentor you. And I've been quite fortunate. I have some mentors. Most of my mentors are peers, actually, so who I would bounce ideas off. So probably about the same level of seniority as myself, and then my sponsors would be very senior, so the senior executive team, both at Man Group and within the industry. But they're all people that I have delivered projects or initiatives for already, which is what I think gets their buy-in. So moving on then to diversity and inclusion, which I mentioned earlier that I'm massively passionate about. I think just circling back to where I said I wanted to be a teacher, this fulfills that itch for me. So our diversity and inclusion initiative platform is headed by our COO and General Counsel, Robin Grew, who's also one of my sponsors. And she really sets the tone. So I started Man Group 3 years ago, as I mentioned, and coming from JP Morgan, where there were lots of employee networks and initiatives, and then joining Man Group, where there was hardly anything in comparison, I reached out and took the initiative to our COO and asked her if I could help build out the diversity and inclusion initiative. And again, an example of me using my initiative. And I was fortunate enough that she said yes and to run with it. And I've been doing that for 2 years now. Why is it important to me? It's important to me because I think that this industry benefits from having diverse people. I think the more diverse a team or group or organization, I think it brings about better results. It removes the idea of groupthink, that's for sure. And I just think everyone deserves, a chance to be in whatever industry they want. And I truly do wish that every industry was meritocratic, and if you work hard, you do get far. So that's why it's important to me. So Drive is our diversity and inclusion platform. And then 3 years on, we now have a Black Employees Network, which I'm a member of. As I said, we have a London working group, which I chair. We have a Pride Network, Family Network, a Next Gen Network. And, they've all done tremendous things. And what I love about the networks now, and what I think is a testament to them, is they are so powerful, and that it's not just events that we're running, but we actually have the ear of the senior executive team. We're actually driving the culture of the firm. And, there are loads of examples like that. The Black Network have been pushing the firm to look at their representation of senior managers. We've been looking at the graduate program process, and are we filtering anyone out based on biases that we shouldn't? How do we get more Black students to apply to Man Group? So it's having a massive impact on the firm and the industry in general. I'm also part of an organisation called Diversity Project, and I'm an ambassador for them for diversity and inclusion. They are sponsored by the Investment Association. So it's a well-known industry group with loads of members. Talk About Black, which for some of you that are on LinkedIn and social media on those platforms will have seen. This is a movement within the industry by some senior Black professionals in asset management who are really trying to challenge the status quo, remove the taboo of ethnicity, and drive change, hold firms accountable. So one of their streams is a partnership called N Circle, which I'm on the committee for, and we run monthly mentoring circles for Black professionals within the industry of 0 to 10 years experience. And it's a safe space where they get access to senior Black professionals in the industry, and we can discuss topics and give advice. And then, as I mentioned, I'm also part of the Black Women in Asset Management, who asked me to be here today. So just to round up then, in terms of, I've put here some frequently asked questions, which I'm asked quite a lot when I do these types of events, and then also my top tips. And then if there are any questions from anyone that's on the line, I can answer them for you. So have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? Is something that I get asked a lot. And I think the answer is yes. And funnily enough, because I speak to quite a few colleagues, I think there are a lot of people that experience this, not just minorities. But I have, and there are loads of stories that I can tell. I remember my first meeting at Man Group when I started. I was in a meeting and it was with 3 men, white men, and they were speaking about golf for the first half of the meeting, like half an hour, and completely excluded me from the meeting. And I remember thinking, gosh, I really just don't belong here. What am I doing here? This is not somewhere for me. I've been promoted, as I mentioned, in both firms multiple times, and each time I have that thought of whether I'm deserving that promotion. Am I good enough? Can I do this role? Is it a step too far? I think those thoughts are normal. I also think that they're healthy, and it's good to stay humble, and it makes sure that I give 110% and try harder. But I think the key to success with this is, even if you have those thoughts that you don't belong, or you might not be good enough, or it's too far a reach, is to do it anyway. So as long as the imposter syndrome doesn't stop you from taking that step, then I think it's natural. Has your race impacted your career? That's just such a difficult question, and I think I'd be naive to say it hasn't. Maybe I would have been, who knows, COO by now if I wasn't Black, but I honestly don't know. And my outlook is to tend to steer away from that thought. So if I didn't get a job, and there have been promotions I've gone for and not got, or roles that I've gone for and not got, but unless I had something direct and clear evidence that it was based on my race, I would never, that would never come to mind for me. I'm the type of person that would say, what could I have done better? What did I need to get that role? How do I get it next time? But to the next point, how do you manage microaggressions? It's something that happens quite a lot and very often. And this is where it's the more subtle racism or discrimination, stereotypes that you'll hear and that people will say to you. And I've experienced loads, one as a woman, as a Black person, and then also as a mother. For me, I think this industry is a tough industry, and you have to be tough-skinned. So I don't take comments. I'm not a sensitive person, and I probably give as good as I got. So I would have a quick comeback and I would call people out for saying anything that I felt was an example of microaggressions. But I think the key is just to make sure that my work speaks volumes, so people have no reason, to not put me on and put me forward. What's the best way to move roles internally? So this is something that I get asked by mentees that I have quite a lot. So for me, I think it's down to that relationship building again. And I know that keeps coming up, but speaking to people, finding out what they do, having those informal coffees is so important to network. And I don't mean networking as in going to a networking event and, meeting people. I'm not the biggest fan of those sort of things, but it is on you've worked on a project with someone, you've had an email query with them, oh, shall we have a coffee? Obviously, it's a bit more difficult now, but you can still have a virtual call. I'd like to understand it a bit better. What do you do? How are you? It's that relationship building that you want, that if a role comes up in their team, that they want you to fill that. And that's what I've done in all the instances where I've moved vertically to other departments. I first built relationships with those managers if it's something that I want to do. So moving into financial crime, for example, from accounting, the head of financial crime, I asked our COO to make an introduction to him. I spoke to him about what he does, how did he get into that role, can he send me any interesting articles? I'm generally interested in this stuff. Things that I would find, I'd send to him. We'd debate topics and regulatory changes, so much so that we built a relationship over a course of 6 months. And an opening came up in his team, a senior opening, which I probably shouldn't have been put forward for with no experience, my background being accounting. But because I built that relationship and he'd seen what I'd been able to do in terms of adding value to the team I was running before, he had considered me for that role and said, would you be interested? So, and it was only at that point, after having discussions with him, that I then told my manager that I'm thinking of moving internally. So I think keeping it informal, relationship building, and making contacts is the biggest and best way to open up opportunities to move internally. How do you balance being a mother and a career? Yeah, it's tough, especially during lockdown, as everyone can imagine, and schools closed. I'm quite lucky that my work and Man Group is very flexible in terms of just flexibility of work and childcare. But it is hard. And I remember having my first child and going back to work. And at 7 p.m. when she was asleep, I'd be working till 1 o'clock in the morning at JP Morgan and logging on online. So just because I have that flexibility, it doesn't mean that you're not putting in a double shift or working hard. But I want a successful career and I want to do well. So it drives you. And when you're doing something you enjoy, it doesn't feel like hard work. I know it's cliche, but it's very true. So key takeaways then, and this is what I'll finish up on. So for me, execution is a word I say a lot, and I know it's quite cheesy, but it just is so key, and it's to execute first. I don't think you can ask anyone to give you a chance, anyone to give you an opportunity, give you a role or anything if you haven't executed something. So even if that is down to you applying for jobs, give 100%. No, in your cover letters, CVs, whatever it is, you have to be able to demonstrate a high level of professionalism and execution. Once you're in a role, you need to be looking for opportunities where you can prove yourself, even if it's the smallest thing of chairing a meeting. You know, I remember in the early days of my career, I would be able to chair a meeting and I would take it like I was running, you know, AGM or something. I would have prepped the printouts and knew who all my attendees were, minutes were taken to a high standard. I would just show that level of professionalism that I had. So I think first and foremost, you need to execute. No one's going to give you an opportunity if you haven't proven yourself first. Personal brand is such a big one, and be conscious of your personal brand. What do you want to be known for? I remember a mentor of mine who was an old manager at JP Morgan, and when I was asking him for advice, he said that to him, personal brand was the key, and that he had built a personal brand of being someone that troubleshoots, and like they used to call him a fireman, a fire extinguisher. So you would drop him in a team that had loads of issues and errors, maybe a high turnover, and he would fix that problem, the fixer. So it's just, what brand do you want to be known as? So I was always someone that I didn't want to be known as someone that comes in late or is talking, or someone that makes jokes. I want to be known as someone that if you give Marina something to do, she gets it done. So that's just something that I consciously work on, and something that I repeat over and over again. If you give it to me, it will get done. I'm on it, it will get done. So I think personal brand it is key, and don't underestimate that. Visibility, again, it's another key one, and just looping back to where I gave the story of a promotion, and that you need other managers to vouch for you in order to get that. It's very important to be visible. It's very important to speak up in meetings. I know some people might say, you know, if you don't have anything to say, don't speak, or don't just speak for the sake of it. But I truly think it's the opposite. Even if you're not sure of what you can contribute, ask a question. It's so important to be visible. There's so many people that go to meetings and no one even knows who they are, or you'll get a senior manager say afterwards, who was that person that sat in the corner? They didn't say a word. You don't want to be that person. You want to be someone that people remember. And then also put your hands up for projects. If you're in a meeting and there's an action, no matter what it is, you want to be the person that says, I'll do it. Visibility is just fundamental. Relationships then is key, and I've touched on that quite a lot, so I won't labor the point, but vertically and horizontally across your organization, it's important to build relationships with your peers, with senior management. The more relationships you can have, the better, because you will lean on them and need them. It ties into your personal brand. You want people to speak well about you when you're not there. And then lastly, communication, which I think is key, and something that people don't focus on enough in terms of promotions and where they want to be. So you need to ask for what you want and what your end goal is. And I don't think it's not arrogant, and it's not a bad thing to do. If you're an analyst and you want to get to associate, you should be having those discussions at every point that you can. So during your one-to-ones, during your mid-year, during your year-end discussions, what do I need to do? And you're not just asking for the sake of it. The whole point of asking is to work backwards. So what do I need to do to get to an associate level? And then your manager might say, well, you know, you need to lead this project or this execution. That's fine. That goes into my objectives. But if you haven't put it out there and told your manager what it is you want, you can't be expected to be on the radar to get it. So those are the key things for me: execution, personal brand, visibility, relationships, and communication. Hopefully you found that useful. My time is almost up for 10 minutes. I'm not sure if there are any questions that anyone has. Otherwise, if not, I think we can finish early. Oh, I can see a question from Lydia. What is your day-to-day work like? And that's currently, I assume. So it really does vary. it varies quite a lot. Say, for example, my day-to-day would be, I have some meetings with the sales guys speaking about opportunities which they want to explore. So they're looking at, and I obviously can't say too much, but they're looking at Angola and Nigeria for investments. So I'd be speaking to them about the financial crime risks that come with that region. And that will entail me doing due diligence and lots of research on what are the current affairs in those countries, what regulations they have. A lot of it might be query management, report writing. So in financial crime, because we work quite a lot with the lawyers, our day-to-day is a lot of report writing. But it's to a senior audience, so you're making recommendations of whether we can move forward, what are the risks that are there. That's my day-to-day now. It consists of a lot of meetings, split between, I think my diversity and inclusion work is maybe 30% of my time, and the rest will be financial crime. But I'm trying to think, if you were starting as a junior in financial crime, it's a lot of analysing reports and market activity, just to look if there are any financial crime risks. So looking at sanctions and whether the US have sanctioned any entities that we might do business with. But yeah, the role in financial crime, it varies quite a lot versus accounting, where it would be more procedural and structural, where you're producing a NAV daily, or hundreds of NAVs daily. So it's completely different now. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you all for your time. I am on LinkedIn, Marina Ebrubah, so if anyone has any questions afterwards, you can find me and ask. Also really happy to help with any connections that you need within the industry, or anything you'd like to discuss. It doesn't have to necessarily be in my line of business. And I wish you all the best of luck with your studies. Thank you.